Hi everyone and welcome to the Footy Locker Room with myself, Mo Amir. This is pretty much the first episode of the channel, and we did do a very brief intro video, but this will be the first full episode. So super excited, super stoked to get stuck in, and hopefully you enjoy. Today, I pretty much wanted to discuss the state of play at Manchester United at this current moment. There's been massive changes over the past few weeks and months, and at the moment, I strongly believe we are in a very delicate situation of where the club is heading. In saying that, I'm super positive. The signs all look really strong and really like they are pointing towards the up, in my view. And we just take a short step back and we look at the previous big, let's say, key figures at the club and how that has changed. Obviously, with the people behind the scenes who've gone, like your John Murdoch, and obviously we had Erik Ten Hag as our coach, and there's a lot of very strong feelings towards him. Um, but I, like everyone else, I also thought he was pretty much the one. I got very excited when he was appointed. In a way, he's sort of that's burnt us for our current appointment. It left us a bit scarred. Not to get too gassed, not to get too excited. It seemed like the different, appointment compared to the previous managers in terms of getting somebody that was still, they had a way of playing. They were proactive. They also had that disciplinarian mindset, and it just seemed like it would make sense. He was probably the highest rated coach, or one of the highest rated coaches at that time. And moving along, I guess the first season we could say that was quite successful, finishing was a third, and also winning the League Cup. Um, I think overall that seemed like a good season. There was also a lot of issues going on in the club at the time. So obviously the whole Cristiano Ronaldo thing, that was massive. And then there was the Jadon Sancho issue. I felt he dealt all of those really, really well, given the circumstances. However, it just seemed like a lot. Then also all of the Rashford issues, it just kept piling on. Nevertheless, it seemed like a good base going into the second season to basically carry on and build on. And that's where it just seems like the wheels started falling apart. Um, the other thing, one of my gripes that I've really got is around the transfers that were made. Now, I know you can't blame the manager for all the transfers because they don't control the finances and exactly all of the ins and outs. However, certain transfers that were made just I don't know. I'm lost for words. So I'll give you an example. Um, Andre Onana. The season that Ten Hag joins United, he leaves on a free transfer to join Bayern Munich, right? Sorry, not Bayern Munich, to join Inter Milan. And now we've seen it with Pep before, right? Normally these managers know what they're looking at. They know the type of profile of players that they have. We all knew David De Gea didn't have it in him as a ball playing goalkeeper. And supposedly moving into a more modern playing style, we would need somebody to do that. Now, surely you've worked with this keeper. Surely on a free transfer, you'll be able to convince him to come in, and you don't even have to make any promises in terms of who's going to be your number one. But surely you could bring him in to compete with De Gea, and worst case, if now you've got two top class goalkeepers, you'd be able to hopefully sell one of them in the call it near future. United weren't even able to get a fee for David De Gea, so it didn't make sense. And then the worst thing is, a year later, you are willing to spend 50 million euros to bring Andre Onana to the club. Now, these are not small figures. That's the type of signing which you should be able to get let's say, at least a really good player, and hopefully somebody that could become world class at that type of money. Then I don't know. Also, Lisandro Martinez. He's really good, and I know fans love him, and I'll probably get a bit of stick for this. But at that price, I mean, surely that did not make sense. I think it was 55 million euros coming from Ajax. It didn't stack up well. That in no way is that the going rate for defenders. I don't think he was that highly rated. Sure, they had a lot of highly rated defenders, but at that price, it didn't fully make sense with me. Look, I'm glad we got him. I do think we overpaid. And then stuff like the players that, oh, okay, I didn't forget about him. I tried to hide him from my memory, but Anthony, who Anthony. I don't know. I think the issue there is just yeah, something happened. I mean, you can't pay that sum of money to the Dutch league and try and make sense of that. That's been a flop. Then, in terms of players who have actually gone to other clubs from Ajax, now you're bringing in all of your mates, you're bringing in all the players that you know. Surely you'd know which ones are the best, and you'd bring in the better ones. So Ryan Gravenberch, who went to Bayern Munich at that stage, and super highly rated youngster. I think it was like 18 million euros. Surely, I mean, you'd be able to convince him. I pretty much think if he did join, I don't think his career would have got to where it is at the moment. So that's maybe more just like I guess, a bit of a punt. But seeing how he's playing now, it really, that really grates me. And also then you've got Julian Timber. Sure, we, prioritized other defenders. But just looking at him, yes, it's not exactly our style because he's an extremely solid defender and he's quite versatile. He can play anywhere. He perhaps doesn't have the attacking game, but he's a footballer and he's like really good. And we were linked with him for quite some time. So it is a bit disappointing to lose out on those type of players, and especially when the transfer fees were quite reasonable. Mohamed Kudus as well. I mean, surely you would have did a toss up between him and Anthony and decided who would be better. Um, when Anthony did sign, sorry to go back to Anthony, but looking at his YouTube clips and compilations, and this guy looked a real player. And just watching a few games for Ajax, so I think there we just really got burnt. But anyways, again, very difficult for Ten Hag to now control everything when it comes to transfers. That role of manager, like, it died with when Sir Alex basically retired. Those structures don't exist, and very, very difficult for a manager to do that. So I don't blame him. The one gripe that I had with Ten Hag is just around, I guess, I don't know. Nowadays, a lot of things are about PR and how you present yourself, how you come across. those communication skills. You have to actually really manage and own the press conferences. So you've got to drive the narrative. And yes, I do think the press are quite unfair in a lot of instances, and they were um, in a bit of a, or let's say there was a bit of a witch hunt after him. And that's what they do. They tend to build you up and then break you down. But I do think they were a bit out of line. But as a manager, you should try and have that authority to bring everybody back in check and, try and control that situation. I do think personality-wise, more like in one-on-one interactions, he was really good in terms of chatting to journalists, building a bit of a rapport. But it just seemed the press conferences, certain things that he was saying, again, winning is always the call it the formula or the template, because when you aren't winning, everything sort of falls apart. Everything looks bad. You can say some absurd things when you're winning, and then it's completely fine. But once you start losing and you say those same things, then sometimes you come across like an idiot. So in that regard, I think, it just didn't help how we were performing, and certain things were just all over the place. I firmly believe that end of last season, Ten Hag needed to go. He finished eighth. For me, regardless of the FA Cup victory, he needed to go. Just rewinding slightly on that, Ineos, that was another tumultuous thing, right? I mean, for manager now to go through ownership change, yes, not full ownership change, but, big structures changing behind the scenes. So with Ineos coming in, and obviously that took the longest time ever, thank you Glazers, and naturally, we had a couple of members, so Barada we knew, but that was going to take a good few months till he got in. Jason Wilcox, that took a lot of time. We had Jean-Claude Blanc. So those type of figureheads, Dan Ashworth, who we chased forever, and eventually we managed to come right on that. So it's those type of situations which also added difficulty and complexity to Ten Hag's situation. Moving then to the end of last season, we win this FA Cup, and again, I've shared my stance. I believe the manager should have been changed there and then, but I just think that I can't fault Ineos for making the decision to keep him, because all of their main players behind the scenes were not yet in place to make that decision. Yes, I believe there were conversations which were being had, but surely they couldn't from there decide, okay, like this is what we are going to do with Ten Hag. So for me, I supported the decision. The thing is, that emotion of winning the cup, also the way in which they won it, and the tactics and the gameplay and that passion and energy. And I also liked his fighting talk, like. But then when you talk the talk, then you've got to walk the walk. So when you say stuff like, if they don't want me, I'll just go win trophies elsewhere and that type of thing. I actually appreciate that, but then you also need to show a bit more with that. So I backed the decision. The one thing that I wasn't 100% comfortable with was the public, and I don't think it was intentional, but the interviewing of, it was almost like I don't know, like a free open interview season for anyone and everyone. And when you look at that list of people who allegedly they chatted to and got really close to, it's a bit it's quite intense. So I do think that that was a bit, it left a bit of a poor taste. But however, given the fact that we finished eighth, he was very close to losing his job. And, it's just that FA Cup game which sort of turned the dial, and we're waiting for the rest of the backroom members to get in. It made sense to keep him, but we knew the pressure would be immense going into the season. And if things didn't turn up like really quickly, then that would be a major problem. And again, I know a lot of people have had Ineos on fraud watch and so on, just to I guess quote a few people, but it didn't. I can fully sort of understand the decision making. Also, they're not like fans. They've got to be level headed. They've got to look at big picture. You've got to look at everything. You have to look at the finances. You have to look at the culture. You have to look at there's just too many aspects. You're trying to build something big. You're trying to build something sustainable. You can't just be making haphazard, quick decisions. So to me, yes, be methodical, be quick where you can, obviously in making, good, quick decisions. But you have to basically give it a bit of time. You have to have the right people there to make those decisions and people to call you out and so on. So obviously we started this current season abysmally. That was very disappointing. I thought, especially after we had in again a really good transfer window. Um, it's we filled a lot of gaps in the team. We brought in, I believe, some quality players, and just to then carry on where we sort of let off, it was very disappointing. At that stage, that's when I think it was probably the Liverpool game, maybe the Spurs game, where I was like, okay, I'm pretty much done. I, I've checked out. I was then officially, let's call it Ten Hag out. And I think he had enough opportunity. The one thing with Ten Hag getting sacked, I don't think anyone can say the man never had enough opportunity to basically, to show, that he's the right coach. So to me, that made perfect sense. What I do think is, again, that Liverpool game, and subsequent to that, after the Spurs game, there was that big meeting, and after that, it was sort of like radio silence. But I do think a big decision was made around that time in terms of like, okay, we're pretty much done here. We need to start looking elsewhere. And I think feelers would have went out around that stage already because they couldn't have concluded a new deal for a manager that quickly, especially at that level and, such high profile, individuals. So I think a decision was made around then. And off the back of that, it was almost like, okay, when there's the next slip up or when there's the next like low or, something it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. So that last straw, then, that's when they'll pull the trigger. So yeah, again, lots of shocking results. We were sort of like crawling, and then eventually West Ham. And again, there wasn't even any talk of, yes, there was talk of El Sacico and what could transpire in that game, but it wasn't. I don't think it was anything firm. There were no, reports. He's been under pressure, and it was sort of the same pressure. So, come when that news broke so soon, it was like, it was joy, but also it was like a shock. I also do think um, it was really tough. I feel sorry for Eric. He seemed like a really nice gentleman, and yeah, I can't fault him in terms of work ethic. We know the man used to put in crazy hours. Based on what we've heard also from other ex-pros, this guy was a workaholic. He used to work insane, and late nights, early mornings, putting in all the effort, but it couldn't translate. It's difficult to even understand why not, but we just didn't get to where he wanted us to get, or we weren't able to. And yeah, Ten Hag unfortunately lost his job, but again, I don't think anybody can say he hadn't been given a fair crack. And we then move on to Ruud Van Nistelrooy. Oh, Ruud was sensational. What a player! What a player! The amount of great memories that he's given us. But nonetheless, we won't look into that. But I felt really sorry for him because I had again big hopes for the season, changing the backroom staff, bringing in Ruud, bringing in Rene Hackett, and hopefully trying to now develop from there, bringing in some fresh impetus and ideas. It never really transpired, right? And Ruud coming into that position, it was amazing. From those 4 games and from the first game and his first press conferences, he just looked the part. He looked so classy. He actually looked like a manager. And it's this, I think, most basic thing to say. However, it's something I feel like we haven't had in some time, which is, it's pretty much absurd. And Rude basically, he inspired us just to basically get through that period of time. It was 4 games. It was really enjoyable, unbeaten. We won 3. We drew the one with an informed Chelsea team. So it was amazing. We started actually scoring a few goals, which was like, yeah. I mean, we didn't see many goals this season, so that was incredible. And just the way how he came across, that passion and that just being so genuine and also just looking the part, walking down the touchline. Sometimes it's just, the way how you dress, the way how you carry yourself. It's all of those things add to that and it gives it, I guess he's got that aura. I feel sorry for him because, you know, they want to they wanted to move away from the old regime, the Ten Hag regime, and naturally because Ruud just joined, he's only been there for a few months, but now he's part of that regime. So it made sense for him to leave, and that's where I felt really sorry for him. But I'm hoping that these 4 games have now been a shop window for other clubs to see, okay, wait, this guy wasn't in our thinking, but he actually looks like he might have something. So perhaps there is something there, and we can look at bringing him in. So that's my hope because I'd love to see Ruud, have a crack at or another crack. He obviously had his stint at PSV, and that actually went quite well. I know towards the end it became a bit difficult and they needed to end, but that was like before the last game of the season. But he actually, when you listen to him speak and he explains tactics and so on, it's like it actually makes sense and he comes across really well and he's got that authority. So I'm actually excited to see, hopefully in the coming, let's say weeks or months, there's always jobs coming up and down, and hopefully I think Ruud will be linked with those, and I'm hoping that he does get an opportunity. Then moving on to the new manager of Manchester United, Ruben Amorim. I'm so gassed. Honestly, it's crazy. And I'm trying my best because again, like I said, we've been scarred, right? We've had Ten Hag who came in maybe with a similar sort of reputation, and look how that turned out. So yes, all the trauma that we've been through and so on, we carry it with us. Let's see, right? I mean, I thought how the deal was concluded was actually amazing. It was really quick. Um, that was super positive for me. In any case, I felt the club acted really swiftly, really professionally, and they kept everything quite civilized. Ruud then had that stint where he managed to just, okay, give us a bird or a platform just to stable the ship. And it's a nice platform now for Ruben to work from. I mean, we're 13th in the league. Amazing. But we're only 4 points off. I think it's third. So really that's nothing with so much of the season left, 27 games. I mean, that's really nothing. It's a good place to start from, you know. And again, initially there was talk of, 3-4-3 and how does this even work? And it's not going to make sense and it doesn't work in this league. And we don't have the players, and tactically it's not, up to scratch. But when you look, and sometimes, as Premier League fans, we very, let's say, biased, and we only focus on a certain way of playing. And this is the football that we know, and this is the football that we appreciate, and needs to be 100 miles an hour, and so on and so on. And obviously, now with Pep, sort of, his influence is everywhere, even at grassroots level, and so on. But looking at other big clubs across the continent, so playing in Europe and playing in their leagues, a lot of them, and a lot of the young upcoming managers, and not, they don't even have to be young, but just progressive, forward-thinking managers are actually playing this three at the back system. Yes, it's slightly different for different clubs and different managers, but a lot of the principles are similar. So if you look at, I mean, for example, last season, back end of last season, if we were looking for maybe, we could say, the best coach to appoint, had we had a replacement, we'd probably be talking about like Xabi Alonso. And the interesting thing is, with time, perceptions also do change, because, for example, had we seen through this season with Ten Hag, then at the end of this season, the managerial landscape would have changed as well, because certain managers would have won things, certain managers would have been sacked, certain managers would have overperformed or underperformed, and that naturally tends to your ratings. If you were to say have a list of like the top 10 managers in the world, those would shift. So it's all point in time. And at this stage, if I'm just thinking back to before Ruben got appointed, it was incredible. So I mean, what were the options? It didn't even seem like there was anybody feasible. Like Thomas Frank didn't inspire me. I was actually hoping we got Thomas Tuchel, but England snapped him up. And it's, hindsight, and it's retrospect, and we haven't yet seen it. I mean, Thomas Tuchel is a great manager, and I think he's going to do really well. But perhaps he wasn't that culture fit in terms of what we needed. It's, the game has changed in terms of also people, just similar how we see in society today, where people need a bit more emotionally, and that EQ element is like super important. So those type of things come into play. And bringing in Ruben, or let's say at that stage now being linked with him and quickly signing off on this deal, we all have subsequently had time to now look into him, read up about him, listen to his press conferences, listen to other people, other journalists, other fans talking about him, and it's been incredible. Cristiano Ronaldo used to call him the poet, and initially I thought, okay, like this is just all gas and it can't really mean anything. But now looking at it, and oh my days, the first video of him touring basically Old Trafford, and there was like that mini interview, and his answers were amazing. I don't know, and I'm trying not to be like swoon, I'm trying not to be gassed, but I've heard another commentator say, "I'm ready to be hurt again," and I can fully sort of relate to that. It's, are we basically setting ourselves up for failure? Hopefully not. But this manager just has a way, it's that element of connecting with people just by your words, by being able to talk to them, relate to them, how you say things, what you say. So I think, it's going to be so much fun. It's incredible to actually start looking forward to press conferences. That's madness, but it's those small victories, and I'm super excited. It's We've come such a long way. Again, now just looking at Ineos coming in and what has happened subsequently over that time, it hasn't been that long, but the changes in my mind have been incredible. And I'm super positive. I really think we're heading in the right direction. I think there's so much more that this club can achieve. And I think now we actually got the one, and I don't want to sound too delusional and getting my hopes up for no reason, but like I am super, super excited. Um, Again, it's a modern way of playing. The interesting part, just touching on the 3-4-3 once again, but a lot of teams, in fact, all the modern teams, in today's times, build up in a 3-2-5 or a slight variation to that, perhaps a 3-4, 3-4-3. Not to say they start in that positions, but that's how the build up actually works. So 3-5 because it gives you all of those perfect passing lane avenues. It also sets you up for counter press. That's what all the clubs do. And I just think with this 3-4-3 system, it's a lot more simplistic. And sometimes I feel our players need like really basics and just easy stuff to follow. So for me, that's actually perfect. If we can stick to something that's simple and easy, then that's amazing. So coming in with this 3-4-3, I look at our squad and I'm really excited. I think a lot of it can work. A lot of it actually makes sense. The nice thing also with shopping for or being in the market rather for players using our formation, there aren't a lot of our, let's say, direct competitors that would be looking for the same types of players. So, for example, if there was a really strong wing back in the market, right? And we've seen wingbacks play in a four at the back, and it's just not the same. They don't necessarily have that same defensive game, and they're not able to bomb forward and push up as much. So it becomes really difficult. And I think we'd probably be then top of that queue to sign those types of players. Next, if we look at something like a number 10, right? A dying breed, and it's sad, that's probably like our favorite types of players growing up. But the number 10 role, which is almost like extinct, you don't have those players who can only focus on being a playmaker. You need to be more of an all-rounder and you need to drop back and so on and so on. But in this system, we've got two tens. Yes, it's not exactly the classic number 10s, but it's playing in between those lines, it's those spaces, being able to play the game from there. And with that imagination, like that's something I'm so excited about. Having also that box midfield with the two in the four and then also the two in front of that, behind the striker. So that again just gives you, there's a lot of triangles in the team, there's a lot of diamonds in the team. The passing lanes are incredible, and it's just getting those basics installed into our players. The other thing about wingbacks is, again, myself growing up as a United fan, I was always used to seeing width and wingers and players bombing down the wings, whipping crosses in, getting to the byline. And it sucks that we haven't seen that in the longest time. So that's, yeah, it's very, I guess I can't say disappointing, but I mean, maybe the game has changed in any case. So yes, it won't be exactly the same, but the nice thing, or what I'm excited about with this 3-4-3 is that there will be width. You are going to have those wingbacks who are pushing forward. When you are chasing a game or putting the opposition under pressure, they are going to push right to the top, and it's going to become more like a 3-5 with players pushing up, and perhaps the one of the mids would also join in. So I'm so excited about it. It's my favorite formation. I absolutely love it. I think the players that we've got, it's so suited to them. If we just maybe run through the team, we've got Andre Onana, who again, I think he's quite decent. I actually like him. He's a phenomenal ball playing goalkeeper. We need to, however, play to his strengths as well. So hopefully, let's see how that goes. But perhaps sometimes he's a bit slow on the ball. If he can maybe pick up the pace, but the tempo and those items will basically be looked at by Amorim to see what type of tempo he would like to set. The other element, before we look at the rest of the squad members, but intensity. That was one of the words that we've heard thus far. Intensity is critical, and they're looking at new players and how we're going to play. And we've seen also from the training clips, this training, like that was incredible for me. I can't even understand it. It's something so silly to watch a training clip and be gassed, but oh, oh my days, that was crazy for me. So looking at our centre backs again, yeah, I know everybody loves Martinez, and he is amazing at what he does and his strengths. But I do believe in a back four. He's not the strongest defender. He has certain limitations, and I don't think he's able to bring forward his best qualities. So for me, he's ideal in that back three as the left centre back. Also, Luke Shaw, who I know people were saying, oh, he's never fit, and it's all true. And they were saying he would ideally play as a left wing back. And we've seen it in the training video, but he played as a, yes, I'm fine, players were limited, but he played as a left centre back. And when he has done so far, even in a back four, he's actually looked really good. So I think those two would basically, let's say, fight for that position. And that makes sense to me. Then on the right centre back, of course, we've got Lenny Yoro, amazing potential, and the quality is unreal. What a signing, what a player. He's also miraculously back to full fitness. I think we will see a debut over the weekend, so that's going to be awesome. Perhaps from the start, but we'll have to see. And the centre back in the back three, for me, you're looking at, I think De Ligt is perfect for that. Again, he's got the passing game, he's got that aggression, he's got that status. I think at some point he might actually become our captain. We don't have too many leaders in the team, but I think De Ligt has something about him, and at least we need to actually start signing those players with character, those players who have stuff to show. And I guess similar to him would be Harry Maguire. So Maguire, again, I actually, in the back three, it might suit him a lot better. Their profiles are quite similar in that regard. So I would think they would dovetail quite nicely. We've still got Evans and we've still got Victor Lindelof. So Evans has been like phenomenal. He's maybe been our best defender, which is a bit crazy. But yeah, I mean, we can't be relying on Johnny Evans. And Victor Lindelof was a bit more passive, but he has got that role-playing game. So I think either of those could also slot in across that back three. Then let's move into centre midfield, where I think it basically picks itself. You've got Ugarte, you've got Casemiro, you've got Kobe. And maybe you could say it depends. I'm not sure if Christian Eriksen will play as a 6 or 8 or rather as maybe a 10, but probably in that deeper role. And I think you've got a nice blend there in terms of having the players who can defend, who can progress the ball, having that aggression. It's a role that needs a lot of energy. So another thing which I do believe is we're going to see a lot more of the squad being used in games because we need that energy and intensity to be at a certain level. And if players are working that hard, they are going to get tired and they will need to be changed. Those centre mid roles are very demanding and the wing back roles are very demanding. And in fact, the whole team, but you can actually see changes being made in games. So to me, that sort of those two centre mids almost pick themselves. The one with Kobe, I always thought, looking at him, that he might in time progress a bit forward to play further up the pitch, and I think it would actually really suit his game. But we probably need him at this stage to be part of the build-up, and I think he could eventually maybe take Bruno's position in the team because I think he's got everything in his locker room. He's amazing on the ball, press resistant. He can actually finish as we've seen, and especially in the youth team, he's been amongst the goals. So phenomenal player. Yeah. Then looking at the two tens, or call them inverted wingers, there was a bit of debate, but I think we've got a sense now that it is going to be Bruno in the one role. And Bruno is amazing. I know a lot of fans give him stick, and a lot of people have some issues with Bruno, but like, what a player. And I know he perhaps moans a bit much and throws his arms up and squeals, but at least he cares. Sometimes he probably cares a bit too much, but at least he shows something and he shows fight. And apparently he's also amazing just in terms of being around the club, interacting with people, interacting with fans, giving back, assisting with the charities and so on. So Bruno, I think for me, is a nailed-on starter. Next to him, Mason Mount, right? Again, the time when we signed him, I don't see how that made any sense, because we had Bruno who basically plays every single game, and then you're spending 60 million on this player that Chelsea didn't want, and there was no space for him. However, now in this new system, I think it could actually really work having Mason Mount there. And for me, Mason Mount and Ahmad would be the two players who would basically alternate. And the nice thing is they've got such different profiles, right? Because Ahmad, first of all, being left-footed, and Mason Mount being right-footed. And then, it's all about pairings. So depending on who's playing as the wing back and who's playing perhaps behind you and on your left as well, it gives you nice passing angles and it gives you different options. So for example, if we look at the current sporting team, the 17-year-old Quenda, who plays on the right wing back, he's left-footed, right? And naturally, if you are a left-footed wing back, you are going to cut in. So yes, get to the byline, but a lot of the time they do cut in. And that might dovetail. Again, this is where your tactics come into play. But if you are a right-footed 10, you would then perhaps peel wide to go into that open space. Or if you wanted to do an overload and perhaps you are a left-footed 10 like Ahmad as well, you'd both be overloading into that half space. So there's so many variations, so many possibilities. But I think we really well stacked in that position. Then the strikers, right? So I just want to touch on Xerxes. So Xerxes, I mean, what a unique player, right? He's got such a different profile. I'm hoping I should have mentioned him in the tens, because I actually think that will be his position. He can't play as the nine. We might be able to play with maybe sometimes 110 and two forwards, because that front three is kind of fluid, although it does have a focal point. I think you would need to pair him with another striker. So I would bring Xerxes in as a 10. He might not be a starter, but let's build him up. He has so much to his game. He needs to, if he can add a bit of intensity, because it just seems, he seems quite slow and he seems quite lethargic, but the quality is there. If he can add intensity to his game, I think he'll be a different player. So I would have Xerxes as an option for the tens, and not as the number nine. The number nine, it would have to be Hoyland, right? He fits the most similar profile to Gyökeres, and I think Amorim can really build him into something special. So I'm excited to see how he develops. Finally, hopefully he gets some sort of service. The other player who's a bit of an interesting one is Marcus Rashford. And initially I was struggling to figure out, okay, where would he even fit into this team? I don't think he has the capacity to play as a wing back, and I don't think it would make sense in any case. And then perhaps as a number 10, I don't know if he has that all-round game and being able to dictate from that position. So most likely it would be the other striking alternative. So I would think him and Hoyland are actually going to alternate. And Rashford he's got that profile where he can run the channels. He can be strong. He can hold the ball. So it's trying to develop that and seeing if perhaps he can mold into that number 9 as well. So again, super stoked and excited about that. Then The last positions which we haven't discussed yet is the wing back positions. So the wing back positions, I think this is where it's been a bit tricky, and this is where we'll only really know as we see the next few games, right? So if we look at what we've got currently, we've got Mazraoui, who's been phenomenal, and we've got Dalo, who I think is a real high quality player. And then Malasia is coming back from injury again amazingly, and he's actually looking quite strong. So I'm quite keen to see a bit of him in action. And like I said, Shaw I think would play as a left centre back, so I'm not going to count him. Then we've also got a few players who I haven't yet mentioned, so Garnacho and Anthony. Right. Now, looking at the Sporting Lisbon template, a lot of the time wingers were played in those wing back positions because that's basically it's their job to get to push forward, and you're trying to pressure the opposition, you're trying to push them back, and you're trying to get in behind. However, that work rate needs to be there to be able to fall back and also, get back into position and cover for your teammates. So you need a player who's like super high energy, ideally if they've got a bit of pace, but they also need to have a bit of thrust. And in that sense, more on the attacking side. So they need to be able to do some stuff in the final third, right? So Mazraoui, I think, could actually work there. I mean, he can play pretty much anywhere on the field because he's just a footballer. He's one of those type of players. I don't know if he's got that, let's say, power in terms of speed, but let's see because, I mean, again, what a player. I think he'd actually be really good in that role, and we might see a bit more in terms of the next stages of what he can get to. Then, if we were to look at somebody like Dalo, who is extremely strong, he's quite intense in terms of his defending. He's got a bit of skill. We've seen that he can actually do things in the final third. He's got a really decent shot. He can actually play. So I think those two options are quite solid for now. They're probably not as, let's say, attacking or as crazy as Frimpong for Bayer Leverkusen or Denzel Dumfries for Inter Milan. But let's see them in that role and see what they can become. Because again, and this is something which I firmly believe, but it's sometimes the system that makes the players rather than the other way around. Like you can have these amazing players, but you play them in the wrong system and it just doesn't work. And you can have like good players and play them in the right system and they can look amazing. So for me, the system is critical. It's getting the right players in the right position to be able to enhance their optimum and their best. So that makes sense to me. And usually what we've seen with Ruben Amorim is he would play one really attacking wing back and one that's perhaps not as attacking. And I think that might sort of work with our squad. So I would say on the left, I would alternate between Ghana and Anthony. And I know in the training clip, Anthony played as a right wing back. I don't have much time for Anthony, but perhaps this is his opportunity. If he can show some application and show some fight, I think he might be able to hopefully get some sort of a career going. At least he has got the defensive game and he has got that intensity. So I think that will work in his favor. And hopefully he can improve in the final third. Perhaps playing at the left might actually help him because he won't keep cutting in on his left and just, kicking the ball out for a goal kick. This way he'd get to the byline and hopefully cross and play a bit more. So I think he might actually work well. And of course, Garnacho, again, I know he's been getting a lot of stick, but again, looking at the old United teams, when young players came in, they were given a chance, they were given an opportunity, they were allowed to make mistakes. Now in this team, it's like you can't make any mistakes because you don't have those old pros and that real quality next to you. So it's a difficult situation. And I think Ghana has been really, I mean, the nice thing or the amazing thing about him is he keeps pushing and keeps trying. So let's see. I think that wing back role could actually really unlock him. It'll give him space to run into. He's obviously got the pace and he's got the skill. And I think he'll also get a lot of goal scoring opportunities from those positions because that's what we've seen in terms of output for the wing backs. So again, I'm super excited. I think our squad is really set up to play this 3-4-3. I'm keen to see the next couple of days, whatever, tidbits we can get in terms of the stories coming out of training and from players and pundits and journalists. And then we're looking forward to Ruben Amorim's first press conference, which, yeah, again, it's crazy to be excited about that. But yeah, quite keen on that. So yeah, we'll probably wrap it up over here and looking forward to the game on Sunday. And next week we'll then maybe do a look back. So a nice review, some more analysis, and we take it from there. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode and yeah, until next time.